Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack the absolutely incredible rulebook that governs literally all living things, from microscopic, invisible cells all the way up to modern humans.
So, what in the world do you have in common with a mushroom and an ostrich egg? And now it sounds like the setup to a weird joke, but the answer actually lies at the very foundation of biological science. And that's exactly what we're going to visually map out today. You see, despite our extremely obvious outward differences, down at a cellular level, we all share an astonishingly similar architecture.
Here's our roadmap for today's journey. We'll start with 1, the building block cells. Move into 2, the story of evolution. Look at 3, organizing life taxonomy. Explore 4, passing it on, reproduction. Decode 5, the blueprint genetics, and then lock it all in with 6, a final review pop quiz.
Section 1. The building blocks, cells.
To really understand this, we have to start small, very small. Back in 1665, a guy named Robert Hooke looked at thin slices of cork under a microscope and changed biology forever. He saw these tiny box-like structures and called them cells because they kind of looked like the simple little rooms in a monastery. Now, the crucial thing to remember is that all living cells basically split into 2 main camps based on how they store their genetic code. On one side, you have your simpler prokaryotes, like bacteria. We're talking incredibly tiny here, usually just 1 to 10 micrometers, and they completely lack a defined membrane-bound nucleus. On the flip side, we have eukaryotes. These guys are much larger, ranging from 10 to 100 micrometers. They have a well-defined nucleus, and they are exactly what make up you, me, and, yep, that mushroom we mentioned earlier.
When you look at the sheer complexity inside a eukaryotic animal cell, it's honestly mind-blowing. But I want to draw your attention to one thing in particular, the lysosomes. These are basically membrane-bound little bubbles packed with powerful digestive enzymes. They act as the cell's internal garbage disposals. In fact, they're so intense they're often called suicidal bags. Get this, as a tadpole grows into a frog, it's actually the lysosomes releasing enzymes to digest the cells of its own tail so the rest of the body can absorb it. How wild is that?
Now, if we switch over to the eukaryotic plant cell, notice how it takes that complex foundation and adds some highly specialized equipment totally absent in our animal cells. You've got this rigid outer layer, the cellulose cell wall, which gives the plant its mechanical support. And then you have the chloroplasts. These are the incredible organelles containing chlorophyll. They are the exact sites where plants pull off the magic trick of converting light into chemical energy through photosynthesis.
Section 2. The story of evolution. So how do these individual cells organize and adapt into millions of completely different species over billions of years? Well, to understand how species change, we have to look at a historical showdown between 2 major ideas. First, you had Jean-Baptiste Lamarck's 1809 theory, which was all about the use and disuse of organs, known as the inheritance of acquired characters. And then, decades later, Charles Darwin drops his famous 1859 theory of natural selection. You probably know it best as survival of the fittest.
Let's break down the difference, because it's super important. Lamarck thought that a giraffe literally stretching its neck day after day to reach high leaves would result in longer-necked babies being born. Sounds logical, but it wasn't quite right. It was Darwin's observation of traits being naturally selected by the environment that actually hit the nail on the head. A perfect real-world example is industrial melanism. Picture this. During the Industrial Revolution, tons of soot completely covered the trees. Almost overnight, dark-colored peppered moths started thriving because they were perfectly camouflaged from predators, while the lighter ones stuck out and got eaten. The environment literally selected the dark trait, allowing it to be successfully passed on to the next generation.
And we can track Darwin's theory right up to our own doorstep, watching our direct ancestors evolve and adapt. Starting around 4 million years ago with the bipedal Australopithecus, the fossil record gives us a really clear progression. You've got Homo habilis stepping up as the first tool users, then Homo erectus walking completely upright and mastering fire, right on through to the Neanderthals. Along this entire journey, environmental pressures were actively selecting for larger, much more complex brains, leading all the way up to the large-brained Homo sapiens of today. That's us.
Section 3. Organizing life taxonomy.
Okay, so with millions of incredible species evolving all over Earth, how do biologists possibly keep track of them all without going completely crazy? Well, in 1758, a brilliant guy named Carl Linnaeus gave us the ultimate filing system. Known as the father of modern taxonomy, he introduced a concept called binomial nomenclature. Basically, he assigned a universal 2-part scientific name to every single organism made up of its genus and species. Thanks to him, it doesn't matter what language you speak, Homo sapiens always means humans, and Panthera leo always means a lion.
Building on that, Robert Whittaker zoomed out in 1969 to classify all life into 5 distinct kingdoms, based entirely on their cell structure and how they get their food. This beautifully maps out the prokaryotic Monera and then all our eukaryotes. Protista, which, fun fact, includes the specific organism that caused the devastating Irish potato famine, along with fungi, plantae, and animalia. It really puts the whole tree of life into perspective.
Now, if you ever need to remember the specific taxonomic hierarchy that falls underneath those big kingdoms, just use this classic mnemonic: King Philip came over for good soup. It stands for kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. It is seriously the easiest way to keep this massive organizational structure perfectly filed away in your brain.
Section 4. Passing it on, reproduction.
Let's shift gears and dive into how these categorized organisms actually ensure the survival of their species. Because, let's face it, evolution relies entirely on organisms passing their traits down. Here we see asexual reproduction in action. It's a highly efficient process because it only requires a single parent. Look at the amoeba and the Leishmania parasite. They are literally splitting entirely in half. That's binary fission. Then check out the hydra. It uses a method called budding, where a tiny exact clone of the parent organism just grows right out of its side before popping off to live its own life.
But wait, it gets even crazier. Some organisms can reproduce through sheer, unbelievable resilience. Take the planaria flatworm. If you were to physically cut a planaria flatworm into multiple fragments, those fragments do not die. Thanks to a process called regeneration, each individual piece will painstakingly regrow its missing parts, eventually developing into an entirely new, fully functioning organism. It's like a superpower.
Section 5. The blueprint. Genetics. This brings us to the ultimate core mystery. What is the invisible code dictating whether an organism grows a bud, regenerates a head, or develops a giant human brain? Our genetic blueprints actually reveal our whole evolutionary history. Just look at our limbs. A human arm and a whale flipper are what we call homologous organs. They are built from the exact same underlying embryonic foundation, but genetics have modified them over time to be used for completely different tasks. This is totally different from analogous organs, like a bird wing and an insect wing. Those evolved from completely different origins just to achieve the exact same function, flight. And the strict rules of this underlying DNA blueprint, that famous double helix discovered by Watson and Crick in 1953, are literally what keep life functioning. Thanks to Chargaff's rule, we know the whole code relies on perfect complementary base pairing. Adenine always pairs with thymine. Guanine always pairs with cytosine. This ensures traits are passed down safely from generation to generation. However, if even a single tiny point mutation occurs in this massive genetic sequence, it can alter the whole organism, causing serious conditions like sickle cell anemia. It's a delicate, beautiful system.
Section 6. Final Review Pop Quiz.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today, from microscopic, single-celled life all the way up to the sprawling taxonomic kingdoms. So let's lock in that knowledge with a quick interactive recall. Think way back to our very first section on the building blocks of life. Do you remember which specific organelle is famous for being the powerhouse of the cell?
Did you get it? It's the mitochondria. By running the Krebs cycle, this absolutely amazing structure produces 36 to 38 molecules of ATP energy for every single molecule of glucose. That process, cellular respiration, is exactly what is keeping your brain and body running right this very second.
To wrap things up today, I want to leave you with a question. If human evolution took millions of years of rigorous natural selection to progress from Australopithecus to Homo sapiens, what environmental pressures do you think are naturally selecting our traits today, right now, in our modern, hyper-technological world? And what do you think humans will look like a million years from now? It's a pretty provocative thought to ponder, isn't it? Because the truth is, the instruction manual of life on Earth is still actively being written.